Imagine this. You are an ordinary person, just like everyone else. You have a family, dreams, and a moral compass that tells you right from wrong. And yet, one day, you find yourself standing in a room, given a simple order. In front of you sits a stranger, their hands bound. A man in a lab coat tells you to press a button. It's just an experiment, he assures you. The person in the chair flinches as electricity surges through their body. You hesitate. Keep going, the authority figure insists. Now, pause for a second. What would you do? This is not fiction. It's the real-life Milgram experiment, one of the most disturbing psychological studies ever conducted. In this experiment, ordinary people, teachers, clerks, fathers, mothers, were instructed to administer what they believed were lethal electric shocks to a stranger. And shockingly, over 65% of participants obeyed orders until the very end, even as the person in the chair screamed in pain. But this was just an experiment. What happens when this obedience plays out in the real world? Take a step back in time to 1944, a quiet town in Europe. A soldier, once a kind-hearted family man, receives an order. He hesitates for a moment, then lifts his rifle. The people in front of him, helpless civilians, look back with pleading eyes. His hands tremble. But then he hears it. Do your duty. And so, he pulls the trigger. This man was not a monster. He was just like you, just like me. How does a good person become capable of such horrors? We like to believe that only bad people commit evil acts, that only the heartless, the psychopaths, the morally corrupt could ever harm another human being. But what if I told you that under the right conditions, you could do the same? Psychology has proven time and time again. The scariest thing about human nature is not that evil exists, it's that it exists within all of us. History has shown this over and over again. The Holocaust, the Rwandan genocide, Abu Ghraib, ordinary people transformed into perpetrators of unimaginable cruelty, not because they were inherently evil, but because of a hidden process, one that slowly erodes morality, warps perception, and turns good people into monsters. And the most terrifying part? You won't even realize it's happening. This transformation does not happen overnight. It's a slow descent, a series of tiny, almost invisible steps. It starts with small moral compromises, a little obedience, a little justification. And before you know it, you've crossed a line you swore you never would. This is not just a history lesson. This is a warning, because the truth is, this process is happening around you, right now, in workplaces, in politics, on social media, in everyday life. And if you don't recognize it, if you don't learn how to stop it, you might just become a part of it. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this happens. The 5 psychological forces that slowly reshape a person's ethics. And most importantly, how you can protect yourself from this fate. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that the moment you think I would never do that is the moment you're most at risk. Welcome to the truth about how good people become monsters. Most people believe that evil is a conscious choice, that only inherently bad individuals are capable of monstrous acts. But history tells a different story. The reality is far more disturbing. Under the right conditions, anyone can be led down a path of destruction. Not because they wake up one day and decide to abandon morality, but because they are slowly pulled into a psychological current they don't even realize exists. This descent is not random. It follows a predictable, systematic process, a pattern that has repeated itself across history, turning ordinary people into participants in unspeakable atrocities. I call it the corruption cycle, a 5-stage transformation that explains why good people become monsters. Stage 1, moral erosion, the first small step. No one jumps straight into darkness. It always begins with tiny compromises, small ethical violations that feel insignificant at first. A harmless lie, a minor betrayal, a slight bending of personal values in the name of necessity. But here's the trick. Each step lowers the threshold for the next one. What was once unthinkable gradually becomes acceptable. Bit by bit, the foundation of morality begins to crack. Stage 2. Obedience to authority, the illusion of duty. The infamous Milgram experiment proves something terrifying. Ordinary people will commit horrifying acts simply because an authority figure tells them to. History has shown this time and time again, whether it's soldiers in war, employees following unethical corporate policies, or citizens enforcing oppressive laws. The mind convinces itself, I'm just doing my job. But that obedience strips away responsibility, allowing evil to flourish under the disguise of duty. Stage 3. The power of group identity, the us versus them. Trap humans are wired for tribalism. We crave belonging. But that same instinct is what makes us vulnerable to dangerous manipulation. When we see ourselves as part of a group, we naturally view outsiders as different, and once that distinction is made, dehumanization begins. History has shown that when people are conditioned to see the other as less than human, atrocities become justifiable. Stage 4. Self-justification and moral licensing. The mind's trickery. No one wants to believe they are the villain. So, when faced with actions that contradict personal values, the mind rewrites the story. I had no choice. I did it for the greater good. This is how history's worst perpetrators have rationalized their crimes. The scariest part? We all do it. The moment we excuse a wrong action because we see ourselves as good, we step deeper into the cycle. Stage 5. Dehumanization, the point of no return. This is the final step. When a person, a group, or a society fully strips humanity from others, there is nothing left to stop cruelty. Once someone is no longer seen as human, morality no longer applies. This is what has fueled genocides, oppressive regimes, and even modern online hate cultures. It's the final, irreversible step in becoming a monster. This cycle has played out across history, in wars, governments, social movements, and even in personal relationships. But here's the terrifying part. It's not just something others fall into. It can happen to any of us. Understanding this cycle is the first step to breaking free from it. And in the next section, we will dissect each stage in deeper detail, starting with the subtle, dangerous process of moral erosion. Evil does not announce itself with fanfare. No one wakes up one day and decides to abandon their morals. It happens in silence, through small, seemingly harmless choices that, over time, lead to devastating consequences. The descent into darkness is never a single leap. It's a slow, almost imperceptible slide. At first, it's just a minor compromise, a tiny lie, a small betrayal, an action that feels justified in the moment. Maybe it's bending the rules to help a friend, keeping quiet when witnessing something unethical, or making a decision that conflicts with personal values but serves a greater purpose. And because nothing immediately terrible happens, the brain learns a dangerous lesson. This is not so bad. The human mind is wired to protect itself from guilt. When faced with an action that contradicts our values, we experience cognitive dissonance, an uncomfortable mental conflict. Instead of admitting we have done something wrong, the brain takes a shortcut. It rewrites reality to make us feel like we are still good. It starts with rationalization. Everyone does it. It's just a one-time thing. It's not hurting anyone. These justifications weaken moral boundaries, making the next compromise even easier. With each step, the guilt diminishes, and what once seemed unthinkable begins to feel normal. A single unethical act might seem insignificant, but it's never just one. Once a person crosses the first boundary, the next one comes easier. The threshold for what is acceptable keeps expanding. History is filled with real-world examples of this effect. The Watergate scandal. What started as a minor political scheme, spying on opponents, quickly escalated into a full-blown criminal conspiracy. Corporate fraud. Many high-profile business scandals, like Enron, began with small financial manipulations that grew into massive fraud. War crimes and genocides. Some of history's worst atrocities were committed by individuals who began with minor moral compromises, simply following orders, enforcing small injustices, until they found themselves deeply complicit in horrific acts. Psychologists have long studied how small requests pave the way for larger ones. If someone agrees to a minor unethical act, they are far more likely to comply with something worse later on. This principle, known as the foot-in-the-door effect, is how authoritarian regimes, manipulative leaders, and even toxic workplaces gradually push people toward unethical behavior. The most dangerous lie, "I would never do that," The scariest part of moral erosion is that most people believe they are immune to it. They look at criminals, corrupt leaders, or historical atrocities and think, I would never do that. But the truth is, no one believes they are capable of evil until it's too late. It's not about being a bad person. It's about failing to recognize the first step. And once that step is taken, the rest of the descent becomes disturbingly easy. In the next section, we will explore the second stage of the corruption cycle, how obedience to authority can override personal morality, pushing even well-intentioned individuals toward unimaginable acts. Most people believe they control their own actions, that their morals are unshakable. But history and psychology tell a different story. Under the right conditions, even good people can be led to commit horrific acts. And the most terrifying part? They don't even realize they are doing anything wrong. This is the power of obedience, one of the strongest, most dangerous forces in human psychology. It can strip away personal responsibility, override morality, and turn ordinary individuals into instruments of harm. In the early 1960s, psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted one of the most disturbing experiments in history. Participants were told they were helping with a learning study. Their task? Administer electric shocks to a learner in another room whenever they answered incorrectly. With each wrong answer, the shock level increased. The learner, an actor, would scream in pain, beg for mercy, and eventually fall silent, implying they had passed out or worse. Yet, under the authority of a scientist in a white lab coat, 65% of participants continued delivering shocks up to the highest voltage, 450 volts, despite believing they were seriously harming or even killing the learner. Why? Because they were told. The experiment requires that you continue. The illusion of just doing my job. Milgram's experiment was not just a psychological test, it was a window into history. The same excuse, I was just following orders, has been used by soldiers, police officers, and ordinary citizens in some of humanity's darkest moments. Nazi officers and concentration camp guards claimed they were simply obeying commands. Many were not sadistic monsters, just ordinary men who had surrendered their morality to authority. The My Lai Massacre. In 1968, U.S. soldiers slaughtered over 500 innocent Vietnamese civilians, including children, because they were ordered to do so. Corporate scandals and corruption. Many financial crimes are not committed by masterminds, but by employees who obey unethical instructions from superiors, assuming they are not responsible. This is the deadliest psychological trap, believing that obeying authority absolves one of personal accountability. Another chilling study. Philip Zimbardo's Stanford Prison Experiment, 1971, revealed how quickly obedience can escalate into cruelty. Students were divided into guards and prisoners in a simulated prison setting. Within days, the guards, who were just normal college students, became sadistic, humiliating, and abusing the prisoners. What started as a simple role play spiraled into real psychological torment. The guards were not following explicit orders. They had simply internalized their authority. The experiment had to be shut down early. Zimbardo later explained, most of us can undergo significant character transformations when caught up in the crucible of social forces. The most disturbing takeaway from these studies is not just that people obey harmful orders, it's that they don't believe they would. Ask anyone, would you have shocked the learner? Would you have been a sadistic prison guard? They will say, never. But every participant in these experiments thought the same thing before they found themselves pushing the button or wielding power over another person. Obedience is not about being evil. It's about social conditioning. We are taught from childhood to respect authority, teachers, bosses, governments, law enforcement. This conditioning runs so deep that when faced with an authoritative command, our first instinct is compliance, not resistance. And that's how good people end up doing terrible things. Not because they are bad, but because they don't question the orders they follow. To resist this psychological force, one must develop conscious moral awareness. When given an order, especially one that feels wrong, the key is to pause and ask, would I do this if no one were telling me to? Would I still feel like a good person afterward? If history judged this moment, how would it be remembered? Because obedience without morality is not loyalty, it's surrender. And as we will see in the next stage, this surrender does not just come from authority figures. It comes from the power of group identity, the force that makes us turn against others. Humans are social creatures, wired to seek belonging. From family and friendships to political parties and nations, our identities are deeply tied to the groups we are part of. But there's a dark side to this instinct, one that has fueled wars, genocide, and mass cruelty throughout history. When we divide the world into us and them, something terrifying happens. Morality takes a back seat, compassion fades, and the people outside our group become less human in our eyes. This is the us versus them trap, one of the most powerful forces that turn good people into monsters. Psychologists have long studied how simply belonging to a group can alter human behavior. In Henry Tajfel's minimal group experiments, researchers divided people into completely random teams, literally flipping a coin to assign them. The results? Participants favored their own group, even when there was no real difference between them and the others. They were willing to harm or disadvantage the other group, even if it did not benefit them personally. This study revealed something unsettling. Group loyalty can override logic, fairness, and even morality. If people are willing to discriminate against an arbitrary group, imagine how much stronger this effect is when race, religion, nationality, or ideology are involved. This is why people justify cruelty as long as it's against the enemy. And history proves just how dangerous this mindset can be. Every major atrocity begins with a single psychological shift, seeing the other side as less than human. This is dehumanization, and it's been used to justify mass murder, slavery, and oppression throughout history. The formula is always the same. Labeling the enemy, Nazis called Jews rats. Hutus in Rwanda called Tutsis cockroaches. Slavers called African people savages. Blaming them for all problems, propaganda convinces people that they are the reason for their suffering. Stripping them of individuality, instead of seeing individuals, people see faceless enemies, groups to be punished, removed, or eliminated. By the time violence begins, the psychological groundwork has already been laid. The enemy is no longer human in the minds of the perpetrators. Every genocide, war crime, and act of mass violence follows this pattern. And what's most terrifying? It's not carried out by psychopaths, it's done by normal people. The Holocaust, millions of ordinary German citizens supported policies that led to mass extermination. Most were not sadistic murderers, they just followed the logic of protecting their own. The Rwandan genocide. In 1994, propaganda turned neighbors against each other. 800,000 people were massacred in just 100 days, not by soldiers, but by everyday citizens. The Stanford prison experiment. Even in a simulated environment, people in the guard group became abusive toward prisoners in just days, simply because of their assigned roles. Each of these cases shows the same horrifying truth. When we see people as the other, we stop seeing them as people at all. You don't need to look to history to see this effect in action. It's happening right now, every day, on social media. Political opponents are no longer people with different views. They are traitors, idiots, or evil. Outrage is manufactured to keep people in a constant state of us versus them thinking. Cancel culture, online harassment, and mob justice thrive because once someone is labeled the enemy, all empathy disappears. This is modern dehumanization. And just like in history, it starts small but can escalate into real-world consequences. So, how do we escape the us versus them mentality? How do we resist the urge to turn against others? Recognize the psychological trap. The moment you start seeing an entire group as the enemy, question it. Who benefits from this division? See individuals, not labels. No group is a monolith. Engage with real people, not stereotypes. Resist propaganda. Whether from politicians, media, or social circles, be aware of narratives that paint others as less human. Because history has shown us one undeniable truth. The moment we stop seeing each other as human, we are capable of anything. No one thinks of themselves as the villain. Even history's worst criminals believed they were acting for a greater purpose. This is the terrifying power of self-justification. The ability of the human mind to twist reality so that even the most immoral acts seem right. At the heart of this lies cognitive dissonance, the psychological discomfort we feel when our actions contradict our morals. Instead of admitting wrongdoing, the brain takes a different route. It rewrites reality. This is how good people continue down a dark path, convinced they are still good. Imagine someone who sees themselves as honest, but gets caught lying. They have two options. Admit they were wrong. This threatens their self-image and makes them feel guilty. Justify the lie. It was for a good reason. Everyone does it. It was not that bad. Most people choose the second option, not just for small lies, but for serious moral failings. This is why corrupt politicians, war criminals, and even everyday people rarely admit guilt. They convince themselves they are still in the right. The further someone goes down this road, the more distorted their morality becomes. And once justification begins, it does not stop. Some of history's worst atrocities were committed in the name of justice. This is the paradox of moral licensing. When people believe they are doing good, they allow themselves to commit evil. Religious wars. Millions have been slaughtered in the belief that their faith must be defended. Political purges. Dictators justify mass killings by claiming they are cleansing society. Censorship and oppression. Free speech is crushed, dissent is punished, all in the name of protecting the people. This is why ideologies, whether political, religious, or social, can become dangerous. When people believe their cause is righteous, they stop questioning their own actions. Throughout history, those in power have rewritten reality to justify their crimes. Dictators claim they are protecting the people while silencing opponents. Corrupt leaders tell themselves they are owed their wealth and privileges. Military leaders justify war crimes as necessary for security. Even when caught, they refuse to see themselves as villains. Their self-justification is so strong that they truly believe they are the heroes. And if history has proven anything, it's that the more power someone has, the easier it is to justify the unjustifiable. Self-justification is not just a tool of the powerful, it's something we all do. A person cheats on a test but tells themselves, "I studied hard, I deserve this." A worker mistreats a colleague but rationalizes, "They had it coming." A driver runs a red light and thinks, "Everyone does it." It's not a big deal. Each small justification pushes them further down a slippery slope. And over time, what once seemed wrong starts to feel normal. The moment someone says, "I had no choice," or "It was for the greater good," they are on dangerous ground. So, how do we resist this? How do we ensure that we don't fall into self-deception? Recognize discomfort as a warning sign. If you ever feel the need to justify an action, stop. Ask yourself, am I making excuses? Hold yourself accountable. The most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. Be brutally honest about your choices. Challenge moral licensing. Just because you have done something good does not give you a free pass to do harm. Surround yourself with people who challenge you. Avoid echo chambers. Seek voices that make you question your own actions. Because the scariest truth of all is this: the road to becoming a monster does not start with evil intentions. It starts with small justifications. There is a moment in every great crime against humanity where the unthinkable becomes possible. A moment when ordinary people stop seeing their victims as fellow human beings. This is dehumanization, the final and most dangerous stage in the descent into evil. Once someone crosses this line, morality no longer applies. The rules that govern human decency disappear, and atrocities that once seemed impossible become justified. But how does this happen? And why do even good people fall into this trap? The human brain has an incredible ability to empathize. When we see someone suffering, our mirror neurons activate. We feel their pain. This is why harming another person is so difficult for most of us. But there is a loophole in our psychology. If we stop perceiving someone as fully human, that empathy vanishes. Throughout history, this trick of the mind has been used to justify war, genocide, slavery, and countless other horrors. In the Rwandan genocide, radio broadcasts referred to the Tutsi people as cockroaches. In Nazi Germany, Jewish people were compared to rats. During slavery in America, black people were described as property instead of people. The pattern is always the same. Before great atrocities occur, language is used to strip away humanity. Once a person becomes an object instead of a human being, harming them no longer feels wrong. Dehumanization is not just something that happens in history books. It's happening right now. in ways most people don't even notice. War and political conflict, governments and propaganda machines paint enemies as monsters to justify violence. Soldiers are trained to use words like targets instead of people to make killing easier. Civil wars begin when people see their own neighbors as the enemy. Social media and online. Hate. The internet allows people to insult and attack others without seeing their faces. This disconnect makes cruelty effortless. Political debates turn into battles of us versus them, where opponents are treated as evil, not human. Mob mentality takes over, leading to cancel culture, harassment, and real-world violence. Each of these forces trains the brain to see certain people as less than human. And once this switch is flipped, there is no limit to what a person can justify. Dehumanization does not just make people tolerate cruelty, it makes them participate in it. Once someone believes that another person is not fully human, there is no moral boundary left to stop them. This is why history's worst atrocities were not committed by monsters. They were committed by ordinary people who were led to believe that their victims deserved it. And once someone commits their first act of cruelty, it becomes easier to do it again. The descent is complete. If history has taught us anything, it's that no one is immune to this process. The only way to resist it is through conscious effort. Be aware of dehumanizing language. Anytime a group is labeled as evil, parasites, vermin, or less than human, alarm bells should go off. See individuals, not groups. Instead of thinking those people are the enemy, ask yourself, what do I really know about this person? Refuse to participate in online hate mobs. Social media rewards outrage, but it also trains the brain to see others as objects. Remember, empathy is a choice. The easiest way to resist dehumanization is to actively remind yourself that every person you meet has thoughts, emotions, and struggles, just like you. Because once dehumanization takes hold, there is no turning back. What if everything we have discussed, the slow erosion of morality, blind obedience, tribalism, self-justification, and dehumanization, was not just a series of unfortunate human flaws? What if they were all symptoms of a deeper, more terrifying truth? The reality is that the descent into darkness is not some rare anomaly. It is not something that happens only to bad people or in extreme historical events. It is wired into the human brain, and that means no one is immune. At the core of every stage in the corruption cycle lies a single, primal instinct, one that has been with us since the beginning of time: survival. Every psychological force that pushes good people toward evil is a byproduct of the same ancient drive to protect ourselves, belong to a group, and secure our own well-being, even at the cost of others. Moral erosion? A defense mechanism. The brain rewrites reality to avoid guilt and protect the self-image. Obedience to authority? A survival strategy. For most of human history, obeying leaders without question increased chances of survival. Group identity and tribalism? A biological instinct. Being part of a strong, united group ensured protection from outside threats. Self-justification and moral licensing? The brain's way of maintaining psychological stability in the face of contradictions. Dehumanization? The most dangerous survival tool of all. When a group is seen as a threat, the mind instinctively suppresses empathy to remove moral hesitation. These mechanisms were not designed for evil. They evolved to help humans navigate a dangerous world. But in the modern era, they can be hijacked and turned against us. This is why history repeats itself, why seemingly ordinary people fall into the same patterns, over and over again. If the capacity for darkness is built into all of us, does that mean resisting it is impossible? Number. But it requires something that does not come naturally: radical self-awareness. The moment you think, I would never do something like that, you are already at risk. The only defense is recognizing that you are just as vulnerable as anyone else. Conscious moral reflection. Morality is not just about following rules. It's about constantly questioning your own thoughts, choices, and biases, breaking the psychological cycle. Every time you justify a small, unethical act, blindly follow authority, or demonize a group, pause. Ask yourself, am I being manipulated by my own instincts? the power of radical empathy. The antidote to dehumanization is seeing the humanity in everyone, even those you disagree with or fear. Because in the end, the line between good and evil is not drawn between people. It runs through every human heart. If history has proven anything, it's that the line between good and evil is thinner than we think, and it runs through every human heart. The most dangerous belief you can hold is, I would never do something like that. Because the moment you assume you are immune, you stop paying attention, and that's when the descent begins. But if the psychological forces that corrupt people are built into us, how do we fight them? How do we break free from the cycle that has shaped some of the darkest moments in human history? The answer is not easy, but it is possible. Daily self-reflection. The mirror test. Ask yourself, if someone else did what I just did, would I still consider them a good person? We justify our own small compromises every day, but when we see the same behavior in others, we judge it differently. This simple question forces you to confront your own moral blind spots, questioning authority. Always obedience feels safe, but history proves that blindly following orders has led to some of humanity's worst atrocities. If someone in power tells you to do something that feels wrong, stop and ask, would I still do this if no one was watching? The tribalism trap. Destroy the us versus them. Illusion. The moment you start seeing a group of people as less than or the enemy, you're already on a dangerous path. Radical empathy is the antidote. Seek to understand people you disagree with. Challenge your own biases, because dehumanization starts with a simple thought. They are not like us. Moral courage. Speak up when it's hardest. The easiest way to let evil grow is to stay silent. If something feels wrong, say something, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you are the only one. The world does not just need good people, it needs people willing to act when it matters. Now that you know this, what will you do differently? Because the truth is, this is not just about history. It is not just about psychology. It's about you. Right now, at this very moment, the same forces that shaped history's darkest moments are still at work. They shape our choices, our interactions, and the way we see the world. The only question is, will you be aware enough to resist them?